Ladies and gentlemen, the Sackler family. A family that I would like to think is the most hated family in America. I don't like talking about them very often, but they're back in the news again after being in the news for causing the opioid crisis. It's funny because when I first started out on this journey, like a lot of people, I referred to the military-industrial complex as the MIC. The thing that's funny about that is it's the medical industrial complex as well. It's still the MIC, but we were really misguided in why we were going to war, weren't we? It's kind of obvious now as we watch all of our military and medical corporations fight a, quote, invisible enemy. But back in 2001, things were a lot scarier. See, back in 2001, we were all very much more happy to believe the mainstream narrative. But even though it was there in front of our face, we still weren't catching it. This Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article came out in early of 2001, and as you can see, it says that the Taliban had wiped out the nation's opium supply. Now, to me at the time, this went completely unnoticed, but to families like the Sacklers, I think they probably took note, along with the vast majority of the elite in our country. Now, I'm not saying that we went to Afghanistan for the poppies, but we definitely stayed in Afghanistan for the poppies. However, obviously, pictures of the soldiers in Afghanistan guarding this crop didn't really fare well, and so didn't make it often into the mainstream media. But don't let me tell the story. Let's look at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, because they do surveys on Afghanistan's poppy production almost every year. And when you look at the charts that are contained herein, you'll see that conveniently it goes from 2013 to 2018, covering only 5 years, and you can see what they would like you to think is a decline, but is generally pretty average. I'll show you their 5-point plan: alternative livelihoods, elimination, eradication, interdiction, law enforcement, and public information is how they're going to tackle this problem. And they'll give you the role of opiates in comparison of 2017 to 2018. And hey, good news. The opium production dropped by 29% from 2017 to 2018. Of course, then they go on to say that it has nothing to do with anything that they've been doing, but rather the result of a drought. You get this cool satellite imagery that compares year to year in agricultural areas. But every year, without fail, they include this graph. And this graph just bothers the shit out of me. It was relatively stable until 2001. In between, 91,000 and 54,000 or something like that. And then the Taliban, with their complete ban, got it down to 8,000 hectares in 2001. But of course, in the UN's report on 2018, they don't want to go back and talk about what happened 17 years ago, eh? But luckily, a little bit of internet sleuthing, and hey, you can find every year. So here we are, 2001, the Poppy Survey. How did the Taliban do it? Let's read. In July of 2000, the Taliban authorities banned the cultivation of opium poppy throughout all areas under their control. In November-December 2000, reports from Afghanistan suggested vigorous implementation of the ban by authorities. Early in February this year, UNDCP carried out a pre-assessment survey to obtain an early quantitative assessment of the area of poppy cultivation and to determine the degree of compliance with the ban. Subsequently, in May of 2001, a delegation of UNDCP major donors undertook a mission to the main poppy cultivating areas of Afghanistan to, inter alia, assess the effectiveness of the ban firsthand. Both the pre-assessment survey and the UNDCP donor mission observed the near total success of the ban in eliminating poppy cultivation in Taliban-controlled areas. This finding has been confirmed by the annual Opium Poppy Survey. And then they hit you with this graph, and they throw the average line up there, and you can see the steep incline. But they just blatantly ignore the fact that the Taliban stopped production in '01, the same year as 9/11. So, the American forces take over the poppy fields in Afghanistan, the number one producer of opium in the world, and around the same time, the Sackler family invents a new pain pill that they market as a miracle, a non-addictive opioid called Oxycontin. Now, I'm trying to keep these videos short, so if you want to look into the Sackler family, you can go ahead and go and Google that. What I want to talk about is where the case is currently at and what the Sackler family is planning on doing. So we'll just give a brief summary to get up to this point. The Sacklers have been tried by a conglomerate of U.S. states' attorneys. And throughout this process, several states have figured out that not only are they not being fined enough money, but that the Sacklers funneled over $10 billion out of their company, Purdue Pharma, before this all happened. The family members that were on the board of Purdue Pharma had to step back, and then Purdue Pharma files for bankruptcy. That they were allowed to file for bankruptcy literally flabbergasted several of these states' attorneys. Reading here, companies that file for bankruptcy typically are given an automatic stay of litigation, which Purdue was given. The attorneys general argued Friday that because they are exercising their state police powers, Purdue Pharma is not entitled to an automatic stay. Well, this would seem like common sense. If the United States attorneys general are prosecuting a company, and that company tries to file bankruptcy during the punishment phase, I think that should be preventable. Now, these states' attorneys, they're a little bit flabbergasted by this whole situation, and here they say, the question, as well as the request to allow litigation to proceed against the Sacklers, will be decided by U.S. bankruptcy judge Robert Drain, who is also the person who gave them the litigation when they asked for bankruptcy. And these states' attorneys just can't figure out why this judge would do that. But for anybody capable of reading and willing to go through more than one article, you could quickly find out about Judge Drain's motivation. Indeed, if you read here, David Bernick, an attorney representing some Sackler family members in an interview, Mr. Bernick, a partner at Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison, LLP, said, blah, 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 yakety schmackety. It really doesn't matter what the lawyer said. The thing I do whenever I see things not going correctly inside of a courtroom is I look at the judge and the prosecuting attorneys and the defense attorneys, and I look for connections. Hey, Judge Robert D. Drain, bankruptcy judge, what's your history, sir? Here is the obligatory Wikipedia photo, and here's his wiki. Let's do a little bit of reading. Drain received a BA degree cum laude with honors in 1979 from Yale. Yay, Yale. And J.D. in 1984 from Columbia University School of Law, where he was a Harlan Fiske Stone Scholar for 3 years. He was a partner in the bankruptcy department of the New York firm, what? Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison. Whoa! But of course we can't trust Wikipedia, so let's go and look at the judge's own bio. At the time of his appointment in 2002, Bush, he was a partner in the bankruptcy department of, that's right, Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison. Now, we've all been involved in this. You know somebody who died of a drug overdose. You were given these opioids without knowledge of what they could be. You know somebody who is addicted. We are all affected by this. And most of us don't even know where the opium, the raw material for these opioids, is coming from. And I really want people to get it through their heads that our soldiers are in Afghanistan, the land of the poppy, and our country is going through an opioid epidemic. This is the same as when in the 80s, our military was in South America, and our country was going through a crack epidemic. You can call that coincidence, but it seems like a mighty large coincidence. And then when you get all the way to the end of it, and we're trying to get a family of elites that made billions off of killing Americans, the attorney that represents the family worked at the same bankruptcy firm as the judge. The judge starts granting Purdue Pharmacy rights that surprise the state's attorneys, and no one can figure out why. This shit is irritating. Anyways, guys, like, share, sub the channel. Get this information out there. Everybody in this country should hate the Sackler family. No joke. What they did was evil. I mean, you look at the medical industrial complex. You look at the scourge of opioids. You look at the decisions that were made over the bug recently. Like the governors moving patients into nursing homes. And I'm starting to really wonder which is more dangerous to us, the medical industrial complex or the military industrial complex. I'm also wondering, is there a difference? I guess it's the mick now. Later, guys.